The Guardian, the Democrats who have called on Joe Biden to step down, the big news was that on a phone call with top leadership in the House, they're saying Joe Biden needs to quit because if he's on the ballot, they all lose. So you got a big list. You got Lloyd Doggett, Rahul Grijalva, Seth Moulton, Mike Quigley, Annie Craig, Adam Smith, Jerry Nadler, Mark Takano, Joe Morrell. There's more. Biden ends up writing a letter to all of them basically saying, I will not step down. So to shout out Batya Ungar-Sargon, we are in the staging a coup against the duly elected nominee stage of, quote, saving democracy.
But remember, it's okay when they stage coups. It's cool if they do it. I find this fascinating, especially Angie Kane of Minnesota, because Minnesota is supposed to be a state that Biden needs coming into this election. So the fact that there's all kinds of issues there already. I mean, you had I don't remember what the term was, but basically all the people in the primary who were like, we don't like Joe Biden because of the Israel-Palestine conflict, so we're going to vote basically no confidence. We want someone else. I mean, to have states that he really wants to win, starting to say we don't think we don't think you're the one on multiple angles, not just the age, on some of his foreign policy issues, is significant.
So in this letter, he writes, he says, we had a democratic nomination process and the voters have spoken clearly and decisively. I received over 14 million votes, 87% of the votes cast across the entire nominating process. I have nearly 3,900 delegates, making me the presumptive nominee of our party by a wide margin. And he goes on to say, do we now just say this process doesn't matter? That the voters don't have any say, et cetera, et cetera. If I was a Democrat calling I'm going to resign, I have one response to this letter. Joe, deliver the speech in person.
Yeah.
And then I will accept your answer. I'm not going to read a letter that was written by a staffer or Jill.
Why couldn't he go into the White House press briefing room today and just address this, right?
Yeah. What do you mean? Why couldn't he?
I don't know, because it seems like he is really willing to communicate and he believes in his ability for the future. So I don't understand why he didn't just do it. I mean, I guess he had a really busy schedule being followed around by Vice President Kamala Harris.
I'm not. Look, if Democrats are still willing to play this game, by all means, they can do whatever game they want. We have all known since 2020 and before, Joe Biden is not with it, and he is only getting worse. In 2020, we were talking about sundowning. We were like, this guy is sundowning. It gets late. He loses his cognitive capabilities. I mean, everybody gets tired, but sundowning is a serious thing. That was in 2020. And we knew it was going to be an exponential decline. The idea that Joe wrote this letter is laughable. A staffer wrote it and sent it out.
Or Jill.
Because if it was Trump would do a rally and talk for 4 hours with ad-libbing with no prompter, telling jokes half the time. Yeah. Joe Biden disappears. We played the game in 2020 when Biden was campaigning from his basement and calling a lid on all of the press events. There's no press event. You can't talk to him. Who is going to fall for this now? Yeah. I mean, I can't believe people fell for it in the first place, but here we are.
Well, the great thing to me is it's so much fun to watch because the Democrats created this monster. They put him in office. They got him there. They knew who he was. They knew he was compromised. And now he doesn't want to leave. Mm-hmm. And they can't get him out because he's president. So it's going to be fun to see how they do it.
When he was posturing, when he was campaigning, like as if he was going to be a one-term president and he was going to usher in the new generation of leadership, which presumably would be female and, a person of color.
Kamala, yeah.
Kamala or someone, I really think that there was this conversation with the leadership of the Democratic Party and the Biden campaign where it was like, I'm just going to do it for 4 years and then I'll leave. No worries. And then as soon as he got in office, he was like, I'm staying for as long as I can.
I like it here. I'm not going anywhere.
I'm loving this, right? So AOC came out saying that she's standing with Joe Biden. She spoke to him extensively. He's the nominee. Trump is up massively. According to their internal polling, Trump's up like 10 points in some swing states. Mm-hmm. If we look at the actual polling right now, 538's got Trump in aggregate up 2.4. All of the latest polls have Trump absolutely above. 2 points, 5 points. If they swap Biden out with Harris, Trump's up 11. Trump v. Biden, when you include Kennedy, West, Stein, and others, he's up 6. Against Pritzker, he's up 8. Against any others, he is massively up. Pritzker, 8 points. Whitmer, 6 points. Beshear, 6 points. Newsom, 4 points. However, the polls all show, there's a couple polls, Michelle Obama crushes Trump by the double digits. I don't believe that for a second.
I don't believe that.
Yeah,
either.
I don't. I believe she's their best option. I do, but I don't think she actually, I think she's their best option. She'd do better than Biden, but she'd still have a rough go of it.
She's not a campaigner. I mean, how would she run a campaign? She's never held office. It's a ridiculous pipe dream. It's like running Oprah.
But see,
I don't think she has those political ambitions.
But I don't know if that matters, because that's just a rumor that people have speculated on, that she doesn't want to do it. I don't know what that means. I'll tell you this. What Democrats know for sure, and their reluctance to run Michelle, has a lot to do with Democrats being racist. And I'm not being cute. Republicans keep playing this game where they're like, oh, but for political reason, she couldn't do it. Or for political reason, she would do it. And I'm like, you see, Republicans are showing your true colors. They're not assuming race will play a role, because Republicans don't consider that a factor when determining whether or not they would vote for a candidate. That's why 9 million Obama voters switched for Trump. They voted for Obama twice. It wasn't a big deal. He was a black man. But Democrats, many of them, as we know from that Yale study, they present themselves as less competent when talking with black people. And what did Barack Obama do with Joe Biden the first time? Why did they add Joe Biden to his ticket? Because they were concerned that Democrats would not vote for Barack Obama. And so they needed an old white guy. That was why they chose Joe Biden. Why did Kamala Harris join the ticket? Nobody voted for Kamala Harris. She couldn't even get a single delegate. They voted for Joe Biden. After everything, Biden has been the guy in the White House they've been using. I think if it's Michelle Obama and Harris, people underestimate there's going to be a lot of uppity suburban Democrats who are like, I respect it, but I won't vote for it.
Mm-hmm. There's the without trying to do the Democrats are the real racist kind of thing. One of the arguments that was being made consistently by people on the right when it came to CRT, when people were first learning about that phrase, critical race theory, and what it means. And we talked about this and we said this kind of stuff on the show, but critical race theory, the whole point of it is to awaken a critical race consciousness, which means make people more aware of their race. For the most part, white people in the United States had not really thought about being white. It was just kind of the way that, the way they were. And so the goal of the left was to awaken make people cognizant of the fact that they're of whatever their race is. The white people that have noticed, they're not just going to be like, oh, well, I guess I'm going to feel bad. And the fact that this is what the Democrats want, they've literally made America a more racist place. Yeah. Because if you're thinking about race and you're focusing on race, you can't help but end up being racist. Even if it's unintentionally racist, like I think there are a lot of Democrats that don't realize when they're being condescending or when they're changing the way they speak when they talk to a different race. Like, that's racist. When you're thinking about race, it makes people more racist. So congratulations, Democrats. This is what CRT provides. This is what CRT does to a society. Nothing good. It makes people more racist. You talk about DEI and Kamala Harris being a DEI candidate. That is a blatantly obvious thing. And it's because the left desires this. The left wants people to think about race. I personally liked it better when we were trying to have a less racist society, when we were doing the liberal thing, trying to focus on the individual as opposed to the race or the color of their skin. But Democrats didn't want that because they thought being racist was a vector or a way to access power. And maybe it is. But if you think that there aren't going to be people that are going to push back, you're wrong. That's just not the way that it's going to be. And it's going to make America worse because of it.
Yeah, I think there's a level of becoming so obsessed with race backfired because it was supposed to be about guilt and shame, right? It was supposed to be, I'll make certain groups feel bad so that they won't stand in my way and or will, support me as someone who deserves more than I feel as though I have gotten. And I think that doesn't last for as long as maybe they thought it would. And it's also not as honorable as they maybe presented it out to be. I think people who do feel like there are issues in the country or whatever else don't feel like that model of pitting people against each other has actually gained anything for them.
Yeah, particularly for young men. Like if you're talking about, there's probably more racist young men now because they're, they don't care. Essentially, you've got young white guys that are like, well, all I get told is I'm the bad guy, and I've got all these problems, and all the things that I want to do make me bad, and I'm blah, blah, blah. So why shouldn't I just go ahead and be like, F you, and check out of society? And
I think it's more than just white men, though. I think it's also, young children who grow up in enclosed communities saying every community out around us is out to get you because of the color of your skin, and you need to judge this person because if they're white, they hate you. If they're whatever, it's intensifying any kind of fear of other instead of being unifying or whatever they said.
But this is a point that Jordan Peterson made. There's going to be a certain group or a certain percentage of people that are going to say, well, if this is the world that we live in, then I'm going to play to win. I don't see why I have to not play to win. I don't see why. I haven't done anything wrong personally, so I don't see why I have to just lay down and take it and accept the fact that you're going to call me names and accept the fact that there are people that are going to say I can't get a job just because of the color of my skin and accept the fact that there are all kinds of things. And there are going to be people that are going to be like, F you.
That's intentional. That's what the left wants to do. They need more racism because their whole goal is to say, we're going to protect you from that evil race over there because they're really racist and we're the guys that are going to stand between you and them. And if they don't have enough, they have to create more. That's what CRT is all about.
Fearful and compliant.
Bring us more racism.
But when you have a cohesive culture and society and people agree to the rules and they live by those rules, everything seems to be fine, and you don't need to live in this reality where you're like, I will burn down my neighbor for power. But now we're in a fractured multicultural society where you have competing interests and some groups that don't believe in free speech, they don't believe in the Constitution, and it's getting bigger. When I spoke with Stephen Marsh, who he wrote several books, he recently wrote a novel with Andrew Yang called The Last Election. He says he's a multicultural democracy guy. And he says that in this country, you've got a multicultural democracy and a constitutional republic, and they're at odds with each other. And he's correct. These multicultural democracy people live in a world where rights don't matter. All that matters is the whim of the mass at the moment. They are not going to want to live in the world that you live in, where you're like, we have enshrined rights and we live by these rules. So what we're facing now is where I would say something like, I believe in free speech, that means free speech for everybody, even the ideas I disagree with. We are now in wartime, cultural wartime. And you cannot live in a reality where you say, I believe everyone's deserving of free speech. No, now it's everyone who agrees with free speech shall have their free speech protected. And those who seek to dismantle and destroy it will not have that right respected. This is the difference. Where in American society where we're all like, no, we agree with free speech. There's no need to tell someone, I don't support your free speech because we all agree. But now we're up against people who think they can utilize our principles and morals and our structures and systems against us to cause us harm and damage. And that means we now have to play to win. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of people who say things like, this is 10 years ago on social media. I remember these battles. Oh, this leftist got banned on X. It was Twitter at the time. And we would all come out and say, that's not cool. Unban them. Even though they've advocated for us to be banned, we believe in free speech. Not anymore. It's cultural wartime. Now I laugh and say, good, ban the rest of them. Anybody who thinks we shouldn't have free speech, ban them all. They live by the sword. This is what they get.
This is something that I've mentioned before. Because of the philosophy that is behind liberalism and behind things like socialism and authoritarianism, you can't have a liberalism that is not going to defend itself. If a liberal or liberalism, if a liberal is engaging in an argument with someone that's an authoritarian, the authoritarian or specifically socialist nowadays, they don't feel any compulsion to be honest because they don't believe in honest exchange. They believe that words are only useful to access power, that the reason that you have dialogue is to acquire power or to embarrass your opponent. They don't believe that you can come to an argument and have an honest and open dialogue. So there's no point in arguing with them. There's no point in treating them like a liberal. We need liberals to understand that it is okay to treat people that are not liberals the way that they would treat you. If you're dealing with liberals, sure, free speech, yes. If you're dealing with liberals, sure, it's good to have honest discussion and honest debate. But if you're dealing with someone that's not a liberal, if they're only using words to manipulate and as a means to acquire power, then you, as a liberal, are well within your rights to engage in a way that will beat them. Because winning is the only thing that matters when you're dealing with people that are only concerned with power. And the left is only concerned with power. They don't believe in any of the things that they say. When they try to make conservatives or whatever live up to the principles that the conservatives have, tell them to F off. You don't have to play their games. It is about winning. When you're dealing with liberals, you're dealing with normal people that are considered what you would consider a normal Democrat from back in the day, or conservatives or whatever. Then you can say, okay, it's good to go ahead and have an honest and open discussion, and we can disagree and blah, blah, blah. If you're dealing with authoritarians, if you're dealing with postmodernists, if you're dealing with people that don't ascribe to Enlightenment philosophy, it doesn't matter what they say. However you can beat them, beat them.
Nick, I wonder what your experience with the Democratic Party has been like, because you're from Kentucky and it has one of the only Democratic governors in that area, right?
Well, I'm from North Carolina. I
okay.
just recently moved to Kentucky.
Okay, but I mean, I feel like the Democratic Party has changed a lot in the last 10 years, you know, definitely since the early 2000s, and some of that is the philosophical and ideological concepts that have been introduced, but some of it is just also maybe party leadership. I mean, what's your view of it?
Well, I think really everything changed. I was in Hollywood when Obama was elected, and I think that's when everything really went hard left. That's when it became like, if you don't support Obama, you're a racist, you need to shut up, you need to be silenced. That's when everybody in Hollywood kind of like knuckled down and went underground. If you were not a Democrat, if you weren't an open Democrat at that time, you had to keep your mouth shut.
Right.
I, of course, didn't. But
before that, it wasn't as bad?
It wasn't quite as bad. I mean, it was still bad during the Bush years, but when Obama got in, that's when it got ugly.
Really?
Because that's when it took a hard turn. And, you know, speaking of free speech, there was a really interesting thing that happened this week with Gina Carano, who got run out of Disney for this innocuous tweet about how, you know, the COVID vaccine, we're treating each other like the Nazis treated each other, or something like that. I'm not saying it right.
Yeah.
But she lost her job, everything famously canceled, all that. She's now suing Disney. Just this past week, Mark Ruffalo put up this tweet about how you're seeing history repeat itself. You know, after the Supreme Court decision, he put up this picture of the Nazis in Germany, and it's like Gina had a correct response to that, which is like, that's fine. It's fine if he wants to say that. But if I say that, on the other side, I have to get canceled, and Ruffalo gets to say whatever he wants. And that's how they function. It's free speech as long as we agree with it. Yeah. But if you say anything that we don't agree with, we're going to cancel you, we're going to run you out, we're going to make sure that you're not employable, and that you don't have a chance to even explain what you meant.
And this is changing. We are pushing back, and we are winning in this regard, and we're going to keep doing it, and they're going to thrash and whine as we continually tell them to shut up.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's the reality of it. There's a big thing happening in skateboarding, which is, you know, more personal to me, but I think really matters to the culture war, in that a few years ago, 3 years ago, we're building these ramps, we're building this park out in in the West Virginia area, tri-state, and I get these pro skateboarders, some of the biggest in the world with big followings, messaging me saying things like, I completely agree with you, I love your show, you are correct, things like that. And I say, hey man, you need to say something, because you're in a position of influence. For a lot of young people, you need to speak up. I'm not saying go out and scream MAGA 2020 or 2024. I'm saying just go out there and be like, if someone says something crazy, you can just say, well, I don't know about all that. That's simple. The response that I get, I can't do that, I'll lose all my sponsors, I'll lose my job. And I said, okay, well, all that is required for evil to triumph is that good men do nothing. And I get it. I get why some of these guys, I'm not going to name them, why they were scared to say anything. Well, something happened interestingly, within the past couple of years. Something interesting has happened, and that is, while when it comes to Disney and movies and films and stuff, you are still fighting a juggernaut, the skateboard industry is not nearly as large. So when the money starts to rescind because of a bad economy, well, people aren't going out and buying new shoes and new skateboards and new gear. They're not doing as much anymore. When it comes to what am I going to buy this month, skateboards are not high up on the list, unfortunately. So a lot of these pros lost their incomes. Some of them are now famously working at department stores. They're Uber drivers. And these are guys, they never made a lot of money, but pro skateboarders maybe in the heyday were making $80K a year. Some of them making over 100, and a small handful are millionaires. Now you've got these guys who have no jobs anymore. Their sponsorships might cover a couple $100 to $1,000 a month, not nearly enough to live off of in your 30s. So now what happens is, cord's been cut. No longer are they saying, I'm going to lose my job if I speak up. Now they're saying, I ain't even got a job. Now a lot of these guys are starting to speak up. Now we're starting to see a lot of these pro skateboarders get sponsored by Public Square. Public Square famously sponsoring Nitro Circus, pro skateboarders, amazing skaters like Beaver Fleming, riding for Public Square. This guy is not like one of the other guys. Beaver's awesome. He speaks up. He's very, public about what he believes, and I got massive respect for him. But a lot of these guys, they're basically saying, if I want to keep working, I now have to take sponsorship from either Public Square or Black Rifle Coffee. I got to tell you, a couple of years ago when I found out Travis Pastrana was dumping Red Bull for Black Rifle, I was like, we are winning. I mean, Travis is huge, superstar. And he's like, Black Rifle Coffee is his new sponsor, no more Red Bull. I'm like, wow, that's an amazing shift. And of course, they're losing their minds over it. The woke people don't have the ability because they don't have the money to actually sustain anyone's livelihood. So these guys who have families, they have kids, they're saying, what keeps me alive and what puts food in the belly of my son? And I'm showing up to these guys and I'm saying, yeah, we got a team of skaters. We pay them a salary. And we pay them more than most skateboarders make from any sponsorship. And they're like, you won. That's what we've needed for a long time. The ability to live, work, be creative, and actually make money. And I'm like, well, this is what we're building. Now we've got here at the Boonies HQ, big pro skateboarders talking about coming in, wanting to be involved. We're signing contracts with a bunch of these guys, and these woke losers who are trying to gatekeep and burn it all down, they have lost whatever power they had because their power only came from one thing, the threat of taking your job away. But I got news for these people. If they send me a mass email saying, hey, pro skateboarder is racist, bigot, insert, I'm going to print it out because I could use a good laugh, and I'm going to show it to my friends. And this guy's not going to be at risk at all. So they have no power anymore. This is one industry where I can say we are starting to win. The scary thing is the Barracks, one of the biggest skate media industry things, shuts down. Braille skateboarding, the Barracks is shut down, but their warehouse is gone, their skate spot. And Braille skateboarding gone. Skateboarding is suffering. So I can't speak for what the Daily Wire is doing, what you guys are doing. You're fighting Hollywood, which is this big behemoth that still has massive power. But where I'm at, skateboarding collapsed already. So all I had to do was walk in with a couple bucks and be like, guys, I'm going to try and reinvest in this community and try and keep people from falling into the dark depths. And now I got these woke skateboarders losing their minds over it. They're furious, but there's no jobs to be taken. So this is how we push back in a culture war. You take opportunity where you can, defend what you love, and build what you can where you can.
Well, we make fun of Joe Biden, and it's all hilarious in a way. But, one thing we have to remember is how really evil what he's doing to the people of January 6th is. Because you talk about a free speech issue, that is exactly what that was. That was a free speech issue, and what they are doing to the January 6th people is trying to silence them. That's what this is all about, is they're punishing these people publicly in a way that sends a message that says, don't ever do this again. Don't protest anything that we do, or this is what will happen to you. And people forget about January 6th because it was over 3 years ago, but people are still being arrested today. 2 weeks ago, a guy named Tommy Tatum, who's in my movie, The War on Truth, he was arrested. He was the guy right beside Roseanne Boylan when she was beaten to death. My friend Jay Johnston, an actor in Hollywood, he pled guilty today to one count because they bled him dry. Mm-hmm. They completely ruined his life. They made him a pariah in the Hollywood community. He couldn't get a job. He lost his friends. And that's what these plea deals are about. The government marches around and say, oh, we've convicted 1,000 out of 1,400 people we've arrested, 1,000 convictions. Most of those are plea deals because they know that they can't get a fair trial in D.C. So they pile up the charges on these guys, and they have to take the plea deal just to save their own lives.
Your friend's the guy from Bob's Burgers, am I right?
Yes, yeah. Jay Johnson.
It's so interesting because this is something that a lot of Americans now know someone who has been affected this way. The fact that, we've had Brandon Strzok on the show, and he said, I took a plea deal because I didn't feel like I had any other options.
Right.
And really, with any kind of federal investigation or even state level, we could talk about stuff going on in New York. They're spending the American people's money to then put them in jail. right? I mean, I can understand where maybe there are some people on January 6th who said, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have, done something small. But they are really being treated as though they were completely, it's being escalated to a point where it's unreasonable, and they are having the full force of the American federal system go after them. What are you supposed to do? I mean, especially considering how expensive lawyers are, you just fight it until you can't anymore. And then ultimately the federal government still has money to spend on you because, by the way, you still have to pay your taxes, which they will then use to prosecute you with. It's a crazy system.
One more thing, the plea deal situation, the perfect illustration of that is Simone Gold and John Strand. They walked into the White House, into the Capitol. She made a speech. The police saw them go in. They both did the exact same thing. They were in the Capitol building for about a minute and a half. John Strand refused to take the plea deal, and he went and fought it because he said, I didn't do anything wrong. Simone Gold took the plea deal. She did 30 days. John Strand went to trial. He tells me in the movie, he mounted a vigorous defense. The jury didn't care. The prosecution lied about what he did that day. Jury didn't care. He got 3.5 years. And that's what the plea deal situation is all about. That's why people take the plea deal.
Go ahead.
But the plea deal situation is a terrible thing all across the judicial system, not just concerning January 6th.
The trial tax.
Yeah, it is a way to make somebody admit to something that they didn't do.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.